Hi, everyone. It's been a week since the election. And we decided we needed to get back into the studio and reconnect with all of y'all for a post-election update. Now more than ever, with these election results, we are driven to look to other countries and movements that have fought back under similar circumstances. So we wanted to remind everyone that the green wave is a blueprint to help us navigate the way forward. And that is the whole reason that we made this series leading up to November 2024. So let's do it. Let's get into it. And admittedly, Asha, the morning of the election, I woke up somber, but thankful that the GTR team have put so much emphasis on the fight for abortion rights. So maybe I didn't wake up so excited, per se, but inspired for the fight that is to come.
I hear you, Monica. I definitely have mixed feelings about it all. I was especially excited to see how the abortion ballot measures would fare, especially in places like Florida, Arizona, and Nevada. You know, we've talked about this a lot in the series.
Yes, definitely. So on election day, it was in the evening when I began to worry.
It's 5:30 and Trump is ahead by like 70 electoral college votes. And yeah, feels a little 2016 right now, but it's still early. The Senate is looking like the Democrats lost it, but it's still early. We will see.
But as the night went on, it really felt like a roller coaster of emotions. I mean, it's like we intuitively knew that this was bad. Something is going down, not in the way we wanted. And part of me needed to protect my sanity and tune out of what was happening on TV and social media, but also I wanted to stay connected.
By 7:30, I remember I was getting tacos and they were watching the election at the taco place. I felt like I knew what was happening.
There was a moment for me, my mom was making a chicken curry and it felt like, oh, this is great. We're going to celebrate our South Asian heritage. And the chicken curry was the greatest part of that night. Because pretty soon after that, and I'm talking early in the evening, I just stopped listening.
Ugh, same. I couldn't. And by midnight, the Associated Press declared Trump the winner.
This is a breaking alert. The Associated Press has called the presidency for Republican Donald Trump. This call comes after the AP determined that Trump was the winner of the battleground state of Wisconsin, whose 10 electoral votes put him over the threshold of the 270 needed to be declared the winner of the race for the White House.
Well, like millions of Americans, I could not sleep that night. And in the morning, I was still processing what happened. And I think many of us still are. It's like 8:30 Pacific, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, the day after Election Day, and didn't sleep very well. I don't think anyone did. I look like a mess. I've been stress picking pimples up here. It's heartbreaking. It's like truly devastating. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, all that momentum and the polls and the punditry and the commentary and all the things that felt like everything was going the way of Kamala Harris winning the presidency. It felt like 2016, but worse.
I was feeling very similar. Many women who will inevitably die because we know that abortion bans don't stop abortions, they just make them more dangerous. So, you know, you might be feeling like crap right now. I know I do. But I also know that speaking to all these women across Latin America, that it's not about the president. It's not about elections. It's about us. It's about us making the future. But I think what helped me to feel a little grounded and also maybe grateful was thinking about all the women and activists throughout this season that we've been able to speak to and amplifying the incredible work of the Green Wave movement.
It's still a moment that I won't forget. But of course, one of the things that I have loved about Green Tide Rising is having Ximena Casas as our featured expert, knowing that she has literally been tracking the impact of abortion criminalization across Latin America and the Caribbean as we've been doing this series. And it feels like her research is more prescient than ever. So because she's been giving us messages of hope from the Green Wave throughout the past episodes, I thought she could give us some words of wisdom through her reactions to the election, because, Ximena, we need something to hold on to here.
My first reaction to the election results is sadness, as the option that has won does not represent the values I believe in. However, I quickly understood that it's not only about my own values and vision of the world, it is about how we could share a vision of the world. This is an opportunity to harness our collective outrage and channel hopelessness through mobilization and defend the rights and principles that unite us as a society, so we can work for the world that many of us vision. Because government has, but movements remain. What has surprised me the most from the election results is that in the midst of this rhetoric and narrative against women's rights, voters supported abortion protection.
That surprised us too. Across the country, in 10 states, voters cast ballots to protect or expand abortion access. And in 7, the Measures for Abortion Rights won. That brings a total of 13 states approving abortion referendums since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022.
Ballot proposals in New York, Maryland, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, and Montana passed. And Missouri, which was the first state to completely ban abortion after Roe fell, and now it is the first state to overturn a ban. So let's take the wins when we can find them.
Totally. And overall, the pro-abortion measures passed on Election Day will expand access for millions of women and people of reproductive age who live in those states, as well as the thousands of others traveling from restrictive areas for care.
While we can't know exactly what percentage of Latinos voted in favor of these measures overall, our polling expert friends at Equis, who we heard from in episode 8, were able to give us a little more info. They zoomed in on precincts that are at least 50% Latina populations in some of these states, which allowed them to get an initial read on what Latino support for the different abortion ballot measures actually looks like.
And a great example of this is in Arizona. Research director Maria de Franco Quinonez and her team were able to look at places like Maricopa and Pima County.
When we take a look at the most Hispanic precincts in those counties, places where 50, 60, 70 or plus % of the voters in those precincts are Hispanic, we see really strong results for the yes vote. Upwards of 70% of the voters in those Hispanic dense precincts voted yes on Prop 139, even outpacing the votes for Harris at the top of the ticket. So again, that just provides us with a gut check on being able to understand what some of these really Hispanic dense precincts in a state like Arizona, where voters were able to decide whether they wanted to enshrine abortion rights in the state's constitution.
There was a lot of news about the increase of Latino support for Trump and what that might mean for future elections. But the data that Equis found tells us a much more nuanced story that we should be paying attention to.
In terms of what this data tells us about how candidates should be engaging Latino voters on abortion, especially looking ahead to the 2026 midterms, it is really undeniable that a majority of Hispanics, including a majority of Latino men, are in favor of protecting abortion rights.
Back in episode 8, Maria told us that Latino voters have doubled from being about 7% of eligible voters in the year 2000 to nearly 15% in 2024. And that no candidate and no party has the privilege of ignoring the power of the Latino vote.
And when we think about some of the key battleground states like Arizona and Nevada, Latinos make up an even greater portion of the electorate, somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 voters in each of those states. Meaning that Latinos have been, are, and will continue to be an essential segment of the pathway to victory for Democrats, for Democratic presidential candidates, and for being able to reach success on ballot measures like the ones that we saw pass in both Arizona and Nevada this election. Historically, Democrats have relied on a strong majority of Latino support as part of their winning coalition. In the last 2 presidential elections, we've seen an erosion of that support for Democrats among Latinos, though it is still clear that a majority of Latinos, bolstered by Latino women, support Democrats.
Yet another reminder of the power of Latinas in this election and for abortion rights in the U.S.
But undoubtedly, the biggest loss of the night was in Florida, where the measure did not pass, despite receiving 57% of the vote, and after advocates had raised more than $100 million to reverse the state's near-total ban on abortion.
To shed more light on what this actually means for Florida, here's Charo Valero at Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice in Florida.
Hola y saludos desde Miami. There's so many feelings with these election results. We're heartbroken that we didn't reach the threshold of 60% to secure our amendment. We're fearful of and upset about what this means for folks who need care in Florida and the South.
So Florida law required at least 60% of voters to approve the ballot measure. And this 60% supermajority is just a really high bar to change a state constitution. Only one other state, New Hampshire, has a higher threshold. And by the way, even though this abortion ballot measure technically lost, it actually got more votes than the Florida governor Ron DeSantis did in his election. So that $100 million that advocates spent was actually very well spent and shows just how much more popular abortion is than Ron DeSantis himself. And so this base building that advocates worked on throughout the past year could actually have a long-term ripple effect. But for now, it is, of course, disappointing and dangerous.
And in any other state, this would have been a landslide win. We built a beautiful movement, and we will never give up on our state and our people. We gave it our all for 17 months. We're the first ballot initiative in the South and the largest one in the country. When folks outside of our state believed we couldn't do it, our citizen-led initiative and campaign collected 1 million petitions from voters back in February. Our campaign launched back in April, gathered 3,000 folks, contacted over 8.5 million voters in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. And we got 57% of the vote.
57% of the vote is not nothing. This ballot measure would have won in every other U.S. state except for 2 that also have supermajorities for some reason. But since May of 2024, the 6-week abortion ban has been in effect in Florida. That is before most folks even know that they're pregnant. And for now, that ban is still in place. But what is also important to pay attention to, as Charo points out, is the level of state-sponsored disinformation that was present throughout the campaign. Up to $20 million in tax-funded resources, she said. This is something that the Latina Institute has been working hard to raise awareness about.
What happened in Florida and how the state and anti-abortion extreme politicians weaponized state agencies and used taxpayer resources to intimidate, lie to, mislead, and confuse voters, and even threaten TV stations running our ads is reprehensible, and these politicians must be held accountable. Rather than allowing Florida voters to decide for themselves whether to make their own decisions about their health, extreme politicians launched relentless attacks on this entire ballot initiative process, including misleading voters about this amendment and spreading misinformation about abortion care.
Charo also told us that when the Latina Institute were able to speak with voters and families to directly dismantle misinformation and propaganda, there was an overwhelming sense that people really understand the importance of making choices about their own bodies and lives.
Anti-abortion politicians worked overtime lying to voters because they know that Floridians do not want politicians interfering in their personal health care decisions. The vote shows that a substantial majority of voters reject Florida's abortion ban.
And for our expert Ximena,
these really give me hope because this is the result of grassroots organization and local mobilization. What I hope the United States work toward reproductive freedom is to take this moment as an opportunity to channel the outrage into a major social mobilization. Grassroots mobilization will be essential to pressure from the bottom up, as we have learned from the Green Wave in Latin America.
The news of Trump winning the election has been disheartening and frustrating for Ximena and many other advocates we've spoken to. But this is also the moment to remind us all of how many people voted to protect abortion access and also how much work we still have left to do.
In this election, 81% of Black men, 90% of Black women, 53% of Latino men, and 59% of Latino women voted for Kamala. However, 74% of white men and 69% of white women voted for Trump. This tells us about the importance of bringing into the conversation many others, so those in a privileged position can feel part of the movement and understand why this is important and why this is a collective fight.
So, although it may be hard to hear this right now, in this moment, the movement is about bringing people in. So, whenever you're ready, we can get out there. And remember, there is a blueprint. Ximena breaks it down for us.
The lessons we have learned from the Green Wave in Latin America and that I can share are the first one, to generate evidence. Developing and presenting data in a way that is compelling to each target audience is an important part of building a coalition in support of reproductive justice. Second, mobilize grassroots campaign. Mobilization from the bottom up to demand policy change that center body autonomy, rights, and dignity around the abortion discussion is essential. Third, storytelling. Share our stories as women and pregnant people of both the tragic stories as unfortunately we have learned from women being denied life-saving abortion care, as all the others and many positive stories of women and pregnant people who have been able to decide about when and how they want to have or not children. And tell these stories not only on social media or through campaigns, but bring these stories into our daily lives, into our dinner tables, our family, friends, and neighbor conversations. 4, create spaces to learn about abortion rights and how it intersects with so many other rights and how it can affect in one way or in another all the different groups. It is essential to destigmatize abortion and start talking about what it is, an essential healthcare service and a basic human right. And finally, all of this will fuel the legal strategy needed to generate policy change and move regulations closer to compliance with international human rights obligations. We need to use the power of law as a tool for social change.
It feels almost impossible to process what's happening here in the US, but I think we have to remember that this has happened in so many places around the world before, especially throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. So we're not alone, and this isn't the end of the story.
For any of you listening who may be disillusioned by politics and our existing systems, I do not blame you. But the movement for bodily autonomy is bigger than just one election, even if it doesn't seem like it right now. Catherine de la Cruz Jaime from CLADEM, you heard her back in episode 5 in the Dominican Republic, reminds us that having a narrow view of change usually only creates more problems.
We have to build our own resources and, we have to be in contact with each other. And I think that's the difference. So I think that that's the important part of to be focused on the community, to make sure that women that needs an abortion and want to have an abortion for whatever reasons are safe.
Throughout this series, we've met some of the women who have shown us what it looks like to build this community and how their lived experiences have propelled them into the movement.
It is an opportunity to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. The green wave has been strengthened by the different green tones brought by so many others like advocates, leaders, activists, women, youth, health providers, researchers, community members, and many others. In dark times, as we heard from the grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo in Argentina,
queremos nuestros hijos, que nos digan dónde están, por lo menos. Mi hijo hoy hace 15 meses. ¿Dónde están los bebés? ¿Dónde están? ¿Por qué no nos dicen a nosotros si están vivos, si están muertos?
Teodora en El Salvador.
Yo solamente quiero decir que yo soy Mujeres Libres. Mi nombre es Teodora Vázquez y luchamos para que nuestra historia no se repita en la generación.
Rebeca em Brasil.
A experiência da clínica foi um caso à parte na minha vida, porque ali eu encontrei tudo que eu não conseguia acessar no meu país. Faria um aborto seguro e sairia dali com o método contraceptivo que eu tinha escolhido.
Vero en México.
Pero muy rápido llegaron mujeres que nos decían, yo no soy víctima de violación, pero también quiero interrumpir este embarazo no deseado. Y nosotras dijimos, el procedimiento es el mismo, ¿no? Más allá de lo que diga la ley, ellas tienen derecho, el procedimiento es lo mismo, nosotras lo podemos garantizar. Y así nace el modelo de acompañamiento de las libres, acompañando abortos seguros en casa sin supervisión médica. Y nada.
And so many others. Is the time when we, the people, create powerful movements to move the needle.
Self-managed abortion, as Vero just referred to, is an extremely useful tool in our toolbox, especially in banned states. You can order abortion pills by mail. They can get delivered to your house, even if you're not pregnant right now, even if you don't plan to be pregnant in the future. You can order pills and just keep them in your medicine cabinet in case of an emergency.
Providers have a sliding scale, so you pay what you can afford. The medication doesn't expire for 2 years, and it is undetectable in your bloodstream in case you have a complication. Mifepristone is safer than Tylenol, so you probably won't, but just in case. Go to youalwayshaveoptions.com for more information, and then download Aya Contigo app to help you through your at-home abortion, created by Dr. Rupen Gill, who we featured in episode 8.
This is one way that you can bring care into your own community, because we save us. And remember, this is not the end of the fight.
You said it, Monica. There is a lot of work ahead of us, and what we can take away from all 8 episodes of Season 1 is that each of us has a role to play in championing bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, especially. I love what Pregnancy Justice President Lourdes Rivera shared in episode 8. Her wisdom shows that this work must continue regardless of who's in power.
To take this inspiration from Latin America and not be dispirited, and to continue fighting this really critical and long fight and know that we can turn things around. So I know it's difficult not to feel paralyzed with all that we're up against, but we can't afford to succumb to inaction. And I think that is one of the lessons that the Green Wave shows us.
These are the times where we create the most innovative strategies, because together and only together we will defeat oppression. So take your green bandana and start organizing in your community.
As we look into the future here in the US and even globally, we can take comfort in knowing that we're not alone. We can and are taking inspiration from the Green Wave and envisioning a world where our collective liberation is a reality, created by us, for us, and where all of us can benefit.
In the moments when it feels like there's no hope, we want to encourage and empower you to listen back to all the stories we've shared throughout the past 8 episodes. Share it with those in your community, have discussions, and don't give up. Green Tide Rising is your toolkit and resource.
You can also watch all episodes of our accompanying video series, Entonces, on YouTube. Follow us on our social media at Green Tide Rising, and subscribe to our Substack, where we'll continue to share news and information about the Green Wave. You can also learn more about the experts and stories we featured in each episode by heading to greentiderising.com.
So although this is goodbye for now, please stay in touch with us and share how Green Tide Rising has inspired or impacted your own life. We can all work together in this fight. Hey, Monica, I love that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. And perhaps it needs a bit of a feminist green wave update. So how about instead of a boat, we can say the green wave abortion rights movement can liberate us all. Thoughts on this?
Oh my gosh, just one thought. I love it.
This episode was produced and written by Monica Morales Garcia.
Special thanks to Ximena Casas.
Green Tide Rising is executive produced by Jess Jacobs and Leela Meadow-Connor, with associate producer Adi Biaringer.
And produced in partnership with Pod People.
Our theme music was composed by Andres Aspiri.
I'm your host, Monica Morales Garcia.
And I'm your host and executive producer, Asha Dahya. We want to take a moment to shout out and thank our amazing sponsors and supporters of independent media like Green Tide Rising, because without them, this series would not have been possible. Thank you to Dr. Nancy O'Reilly and the Women Connect for Good team, the Amalgamated Foundation, the Women's Foundation of California's Culture Change Fund, the International Women's Media Foundation, the Miranda Family Fund, the Case for Her, Global Impact Fund, Phoebe Gates, Mountain Philanthropies, and to our fiscal sponsor, Entertainment to Effect Change. Special thanks to our Season 1 voiceover artists, Amy Selma and Chad Eshman.
Thank you for listening to Season 1 of Green Tide Rising. Be sure to head over to our YouTube channel and watch and share our accompanying video series, Entonces, link in the show notes.
You can also find us on social media and see more about this episode on our website, greentiderising.com. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
And one last time, adios.